right now. So,
Okay, then, wholeness to everybody, family. What we want to do today is attentions away from how we've been programmed to perceive, to evaluate, and discern, and make decisions toward the symbols and what they meant in ancient or informal times, so that we can move away from the language, the methods that been used today is a step downward, sort of speak. It's not going toward a higher unity and oneness, a unified relationship. And this is what we're trying to do. And we understand it's most difficult. So I put together a little concept we're going to use as a lead in, and then we're going to come to look at some of these symbols and be able to measure the difference between what the symbols meant in ancient and formal time as opposed to contemporary language today through metaphors, analogies and parables. And naturally, we're going to be using the scriptures because the scriptures is the basis of our understanding about all things. When we talk about identity, we are now looking back to the Bible, which is not the first document. We don't have access to the original manuscript. We got the King James Version, et cetera, et cetera. And that's King James' perception of how he wants to deal with a contemporary method of revealing what I say belongs to us, which is the knowledge that our ancestors left for us, and we are now trying to activate that relationship. So I'm going to start with the concept that I put together. I call it the concept of the mind is a program. Now, let me explain, because I know you can't talk today. You can't even speak except you start talking about your mind. But all scientific research verifies how the mind came into existence. So that's why we're going back talking about symbols and how they related to even concrete things, physical things. But here we are talking today of metaphorical analogies and parables about those same physical things that the language and metaphors that use today just will not give us the same meaning. So the programming that we have been brought under the influence of, it brought with it what is called a mind. And I know that's not the most comfortable thing for everybody, because everybody believes they got a mind. They're going to always point to, and so we got to use the mind in the proper context so that we don't think that the mind is going to lead us to, the reality that we need in order to activate our higher nature, our higher divinity. The mind, it won't do it. Okay, so we start. We said the original ancient symbol and meaning in their devolution, meaning that these symbols, when we lost consciousness, they devolved into concepts of contemporary modern day language. They are not the same as the symbols in their meaning. We will deal with this idea using the original ancient symbols and their meanings. Afterwards, we will deal with the modern contemporary language and their meaning to make a comparative analysis. We will start with the concept of the original ancient term emanate. The word emanate was coined in 1570 as a noun. And I use these dates because I'm always trying to tie how the Bible relates to these dates so we can see how certain contemporary language, you know, is drawn to identify what they want us to perceive as they translated it into the English language. Now, 1570, emanate. The origination of the world by a series of hierarchical descending radiations from the Godhead through intermediate stages to matter. In other words, matter came as a final result through intermediate stages. It meant that it wasn't matter. Matter came as the latter part of the emanation. Moving on. Number 2 definition, something that emanates or is produced by emanation. And then they give the word affluence. Affluence meaning, and it was coined as a noun 1603. Well, the Bible wasn't written now until, according to English, translated into 1604 to 1611. So you got 7 years. So these terms was already in existence. Okay? So they knew exactly what they needed to translate to move away from ancient meanings into contemporary meanings. Because the ancient meaning would take us back to an ancient way of looking at it and a worldview that would be different from what the present worldview would bring into existence under the dominion of an aberrant people. Continuing on, the word affluent, something that flows out. Definition 1. Definition 2, an action or process of flowing out. So if something is flowing out, it has to be coming from within. If it's flowing outward, it has to be coming from within out. So we need to look inwardly as opposed to outwardly. And this is what contemporary metaphorical examples use scripturally. They always have us looking outward, externally, for solutions. Continuing on. In ancient of time, now, what I'm trying to say here, you will not necessarily immediately when you hear this, think in terms of this is ancient, but it is. Dark energy. Now, you just begin to start hearing about this in the last 10 to 15 years through science. But dark energy was way before science brought it into our knowledge. Dark energy, the non-material, non-physical element called melanin. And then we give the meaning of melanin, which says melanin is a dark light consciousness. And this is very important now because consciousness, we're going to find later on, play a major role in the emanation or activation of what you now has been given as a mind. But it don't produce a mind. Consciousness activates the brain. And the brain in action or the brain in motion produces what is called the mind. And we get into why that's so important. Melanin, Serpent Power, and the Luminous Matrix of Reality by Edward Bruce Bynum, PhD. And he starts off by quoting, casting our eyes toward the history and evolution of the human brain, we immediately notice a number of things. This is why the brain got to be understood, the role it plays. It said we notice a number of things. we see that over time there is a gradual increase in its capacity to absorb light. This is the brain now, not the mind. He said, this is because there is an increase in darkness that covers its surface. This darkness gives it the capacity to absorb light. In all cases, in the terrestrial evolution of the brain, there is an increasing density of dark neuromelanin in the higher nervous system and brain, with a growing capacity for receptivity and absorption of quanta or photons of light. Ain't saying nothing about no mind, but you got to understand how this road, what we understand the mind to be once we get it. From the earliest days of the embryology in our mother's womb, the evolutionary dynamics of bio-life and bioconductivity are associated with light-absorbing melanin. It is literally the first footstep of life, primal material, as it extends out or elongates from that initial ball, in parentheses, black dot, or nucleus of the genesis after sperm and egg have united and begun to take form. So now we see, this is where we want to emphasize how this body and the brain works together. This is very important. In embryos is, or life in the mother's womb, the evolution of the different endocrine glands all the way up to the pineal gland is immediately associated with this unfoldment of life before birth, and reflects the capacity of the emerging body to absorb and orient itself toward light. In this early neural crest, melanin, especially in the vertebrates, grossly condenses and disperses to critical areas during the formation of what will later become the organs and hormonal endocrine. So now, all we talked about here is how melanin brings the physical organs and everything into existence. Now, the brain is now active into existence, and the modern contemporary inorganic artificial intelligence dominant methods of communication through the tongue, language, and speech. So now what we're saying here is that once the brain has been evaluated and understood in the process of time, we can see how artificial intelligence can manipulate the brain. Okay? And in this manipulation, we say the brain is the hardware in the material physical sense that emanates and is activated by consciousness, not by mind, by consciousness. That is non-material / physical, which is the software. Consciousness is the software. And you start talking about computers. You understand computer. The hardware is the computer. The software is what makes the computer, you understand, work. So now we move on. since we are instructed by the author of Resurrection from Judgment, Post-Judgment, Ben Ami, by underlining the word making of a mind, we are able to consider this concept idea much closer. He said, one whose organic consciousness, we're talking about the making of a mind, one whose organic consciousness is set deeply, securely, and permanently. Consciousness is set deeply, so securely and permanently. Not a mind, because we ain't got there yet. The making of this mind, or bringing it into its relationship so it will what? Function via the active brain, then we begin to see how this can be programmed and cause the brain to function accordingly. Now, I hope you're following me. Now, I'm going to make sure everybody get a copy of this so that you can study this. Continuing on. One whose organic consciousness is set deeply, securely, and permanently. Now, when we look at the word making, 12th century noun, and in other different parts of speech as make, 14th century noun, and MADE, 14th century, the adjective, we can clearly see what was done. This is what occurred from the present tense of the verb to make, the manner or style in which a thing is constructed. Finally, in the past tense, made, a artificial, now this is what the dictionary is saying, artificially, fictitious, invented is what they say. This ain't what I'm saying. This is what they say by definition. Is a fleshly or carnal mind person. He said one that is strategically, artificially produced with a fictitious, invented mind. This strategically, artificially produced, fictitiously invented mind was made or created by scientific social engineering. Thus, this strategic, artificially produced, fictitious, invented mind, making of a mind, is not one whose organic consciousness is set deeply, securely, and permanently. This mind was not and is not part of the whole or holistic universal creation. This person or mind is the creation of a dualistic way of viewing all things, which is in opposition to the holistic way of the creation. Coming to the end. Ultimately, the question we must ask is this: what is the mind? And this is taken from a book called Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza, page 60. Joe Dispenza is the fellow that played in the movie What the Bleep Do You Know Now? If you go back and watch that movie, and you will see the depths of that, most of us, when we watched it, didn't understand it. Moving on, he said, the question is, what is the mind? And his response is, and what is the relationship between the brain and the mind? As the organ having the greatest number of neurons gathered together, the brain facilitates thoughts, impulses, both consciously and unconsciously, and acts to control and coordinate both physical and mental function. Without the brain, no other system in the body can operate. Page 60, Evolve Your Brain, Joe Dispenza. Quote, the animated brain can also facilitate behavior, dream, perceive reality, argue, beliefs, be inspired, and most important, and embrace life. In order for the mind to exist, then the brain must be alive. This is a quote from Joe Dispenza. The brain is therefore not the mind. It is the physical apparatus to which the mind is produced. A healthy functioning brain makes for a healthy mind. The brain is a biocomputer that has three individual anatomical structures with which it produces different aspects of mind. The mind is the result of a brain that is coordinating thought impulses through its various regions and substructures. There are many diverse states of mind because we can easily make the brain work in different ways. The brain facilitates the mind as an intricate data processing system. I'll read it again. The brain facilitates the mind as an intricate data processing system so that we have the ability to gather, process, store, recall, and communicate information within seconds. It needs be, as well as the capacity to forecast, respond, behave, and plan and reason. The brain is the control center through which the mind organizes and coordinates all the metabolic function necessary for life and survival. When your biocomputer is turned off or alive, it is functioning by processing information the mind is produced. Now we're coming on to the final portion. He said, when I took neuroanatomy at graduate school and Life University for my doctorate in chiropractic, I just dissected countless number of brains. I quickly saw that without life, the brain is just a piece of matter, an organ that when unanimated cannot think, feel, act, create, or change. Even though the brain is our most important organ, active and necessary for everything we do, how we think, how we behave, what we feel, it needs animation. It is the organ of intelligence, but it's just an organ. In other words, the brain cannot change itself without an operator. The brain is the organ of the central nervous system that has the greatest number of nerve cells for neuron clustered together. When we learn something or have an experience, nerve cells turn up and make new connections, and they literally changes us because the human brain affords so many possibilities, so many possible connections between neurons, and because neurons can communicate directly with each other, the brain is able to process thought, learn new things, remember experiences, perform action, demonstrate behavior, and speculate on possibilities. Just to name a few, it is the central processing unit of the body. Therefore, the brain is the instrument we physically use to consciously evolve our understanding in life and to subconsciously support our very life. Think of consciousness. Now here we go. Think of consciousness as what inhabits and occupies the biocomputer called the brain. It is like the electrical current that runs a computer and all this program. Consciousness is the electrical current. The brain has hardware systems built in and software systems that consciousness is upgrading or routinely using. We ain't got to no mind yet. The brain without consciousness is inert and lifeless. When consciousness is facilitated through the brain, through the human brain, the end result is called mind. So consciousness goes back to melanin. Mind is a working brain, a brain in action. Mind comes into being when an operating brain is animated with life. So life has to go back to melanin and consciousness. There is no mind without the physical expression of life through a functioning brain. All this is Joe Dispenza, page 69. Mind then is the product of consciousness, manipulating the subtle and diverse neural tissue of the brain. Since both of these specific levels of consciousness animate the brain to create mind, we must possess two different arrangements at work in the brain. We have conscious mind and subconscious mind embodied into diverse brain systems. So we see where consciousness and unconsciousness come from when you have a brain. So if you don't have a brain that's active, you ain't got no subconscious and you ain't got no conscious mind. You ain't got none of that. So we close out with this. The original program of the physical body that houses the brain / matter operates as a system that is caused by consciousness. In order to control the human body, we has to insert a program. We refer to it as an artificial intellect, which is the mind. And I know that's kind of hard for everybody, but nevertheless, that's where we are. Number 3, closing out. This is done through scientific social engineering, which is the inverting of energy, which is a process that creates a contrary direction or way of viewing things. This is to say, where energy goes, where attention goes, energy flows. Energy may be defined as being more in harmony with electromagnetism. In other words, your energy is like, electricity. It draws magnetism. It draws things to you. So it's important for us to understand that energy and mind ain't the same thing. Energy is the force that is tied to the elements that we talked about: earth, wind, fire, air, which is all carbonated based upon melanin. That's how we got to look at this. So we're going to get to this to everybody, but we wanted to kind of lay this out, and we wanted to move from there toward something that we refer to as Eitai had mentioned to us something about the letter K. We want to look at the letter K, but before we look at the letter K, I want to take the K and have it to, you know, kind of be kind of symbolic to Kaf Lamed, the Hebrew letter Kaf Lamed. Kaf Lamed in Hebrew means all, or it means coal, or coal means all, and it all means everything is connected together. So this is first found in the book of Genesis, the first chapter, verse 29, when you read the word meat. Say, talking about your diet, you know, talking about the diet, that man, that word that they got for what? Food or meat is the word kaf lamed. Now, why the kaf lamed come so early in the scriptures? Because it's trying to tell us something, you know, beyond what we've understood just your diet is all about, your physical diet. Then we go to the letter K, and from K we want to go to the book Power verses 4. So we'll read a small portion in the energy of 400, because we want to transcend 400 to 500. Then from there, we would like to go to Nikola Tesla's concept of the symbol 369. So each time I'm going to let you go there, and when you get, after we finish with the K, I'll read the little portion in, or you can read it in Power verses 4, and then in the 500 version of 500, okay? Eitai?
Can't hear you, Eitai. I see you speaking, but I can't hear you.
No, I forgot to. I had cut my microphone off to stop the feedback. So where am I reading from exactly?
Well, first of all, could we go to the Kaf Lamed, and you give us an explanation there, and then to the K, and then we will come to page 88 in the Power verses 4. It's about, we read there a small portion, and then we go to Energy 500, all in, you know, Power verses 4, and then we go to Nikola Tesla 369 symbol.
Okay.
I think you showed it to us.
Now you're saying you want me to go to the portion of the K's, the symbol of the K.
Right, and then the Kaf Lamed.
Okay, I'm gonna let you connect it to the Kaf Lamed.
Okay.
I haven't done that, but
okay, all right.
What I do have connects it directly to this aspect of mind and the false definition of what we've come to know as mind. And this.
Okay, well, we can go there. We can go there.
Okay, that's where I'm at.
Okay, yeah, we can go there.
Right. This symbol here is called the Chi-Rho. All right. And the word Chi, we have to pay attention to the sounds of these words and connect them with things that we're familiar with, because they are connected. When we say Chi in Hebrew, we mean life. And when we say Yochai, we interpret it on the lower level as Yah lives.
Right.
But the Chi symbol, the Chi-Rho symbol, is saying much more. If you can look, when you look at the Chi symbol It is the letter K back to back.
Right.
Just the letter K in reverse, back to back. Now, a very powerful symbol, and we're going to connect this to mind, to what has been falsely termed as mind. All right. Now, see, I want to clear something
Go
up.
ahead.
I want to clear something up. What we have to do, all of us, is to be able to take possession of these things no matter where we find them. All right? Because we must realize wherever we find them was by the will and the forethought of our divine ancestors. They were not that divine mind that we are attempting to reconnect with was never put out of the equation. It was always active, even in our enemies. And I want to really go to Revelation 17 and prove this, because we have to relax and to just accept that the information is where it's at by design. If we feel that King James wrote the Bible, our ancestors had their hand on his shoulder, telling him what to put in there and what not to put in there. We must understand this. We must understand this. Because once we see our stuff, we have to aggressively take possession of it, wherever we find it. So we're going to be talking about these 10 horns and 10 kings and 7 crowns as we go forward. These are Moedim. These are, again, signs and symbols that our ancestors have been here, and that they have done this work. All right, and they've put their signature on it. When we see our signs and recognize them, that there is a message in here. I'm at Revelation, if you want to follow along, 17, and I'm going to be reading from the 9th verse. And then I'll stop when I get to the point. And we'll get back to this symbol of the Kiro, or the Cairo.
Eitai,
Yes.
Somebody's trying to ask a question.
Eitai, this is Nezar.
Uh-huh.
Can I ask the question right quick before you start?
Sure.
I keep hearing you talk about the ancestors.
Right.
It seems like all the way since I've been listening to you, you've been talking about the ancestors.
Correct.
So that raises a question to me. It seems like we should be somehow getting back connected with the ancestors. And my question is, how do we do that?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because that should be the obvious question. If I'm in contact with them, if I'm in contact with them, how How come you can't be in contact with them? I'm not special. I'm not special. That's an excellent question. And I hope to get to it a little bit later on, because it is actually a simple process. All you got to do is ask, and they are available. They are part of our DNA and our higher consciousness. But again, where attention goes, energy flows. If we're not cognizant or aware that we have access to this higher level of communication. Look, if the ancestor, why am I worried about what somebody did to the scriptures when I can go right to the ones that were doing the work and that were there, if I believe this, that were there before anything called a King James ever existed. I can tap right into that energy. And that is an excellent question. So, but this is where I'm getting the information from. And I'm telling us we don't have to worry about a thing. They are always in control. And whatever their intent and their will is, understand this. It is being done and it will be done. This is what I want us to understand. And we'll get back to that, Nazar, a little bit later. Excellent question. So, Revelation 17, verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Understand that does not have anything to do with the Roman Catholic Church or the Vatican, as we've been taught. When they talk about the woman, sisters, every sister on here, you should point to yourself. They are talking about that divine feminine power. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. Now, here we go. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Listen, these have one mind. All right, let me ask a question. Where do you think they get the one mind from? These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called chosen and faithful. Now listen, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Listen, the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. They always must begin with the subjugation of the protective feminine in order to subjugate that feminine covering, that rib. For God, listen, hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Let me ask you, what is the city that reigns over the kings of the earth today?
Right now, it's the United States.
Those cities are Washington, D.C., New York City, and Los Angeles, California, Hollywood.
Mhm.
In Europe, it's Paris, Rome, and what? London. Correct?
Correct.
All right. We have to understand what we're hearing. But the important thing is where it says God in verse 17, that is our ancestors, have put it in their hearts. Whatever they do, it's hard for us to comprehend that whatever we perceive an enemy as doing maliciously or surreptitiously or secretly, that they're just fulfilling a will and an intent that was established, listen, long before they were even thought of as a people. Can we conceptualize that? There is nothing that has occurred, that is occurring, that is outside of the divine will and intent of our higher selves. Hard for us to visualize that. Again, because we have not conceptualized ourselves in terms of a proper identity. All right? We identify very heavily with our human aspect only. And that is to say, we identify more strongly with our mind than we do our spirit. Makes sense?
Makes sense.
So let's break this down. And the reason I said this, because the Bible has been left to us as a reliable how-to guide that is going to show us the way back. And I'm talking about the Bible as it fits. I'm going to pause the recording for a minute. This Bible is a very brilliant and reliable guide. It is our decoder ring that's going to help us decode this counterfeit reality, this simulated reality, and this counterfeit identity that we identify so strongly with. And it goes step by step. And I'm going to go back to the symbol chi, because incorporated in this symbol is so many stories, so many allegories, so many ways of looking at ourselves through the proper lens. And again, decoding the false identity and then decoding the false reality. Nasik, you wanted
Uh-huh.
you wanted to read from a
Uh-huh.
specific portion now, and then I'll begin there and tie this in once we establish the thought that you want to bring forth.
All right, Dan. Okay, we're trying to make these connections, family. In the Power verses 4, this level of human consciousness. And we read this the other day, but again, one thing about reading something or doing something over and over and over, it becomes a little bit more palatable, a little bit more clear when we do that. This is the energy level of 400. It's called reason. And I'm going to pick up on page 89 here in this book. It says, reason is limited and that it does not afford the capacity for the discrimination of essence or the critical point of a complex issue.
Nasik,
I think that,
just to make a bookmark there, I'm going to get to essence.
okay.
I'm going to aid us in the discernment of essence, exactly what that is. They're not saying it, but essence is melanin, dark matter energy.
Gotcha.
That's what it is. Go ahead.
Reason does not of itself provide a guide to truth. It produces massive amounts of information and documentation, but lacks the capability to resolve discrepancies in data and conclusion. All philosophical arguments sounds convincing on their own. Now, we know that to be true. This is what we get into. Philosophical arguments is one of the major problems with reason. Although reason is highly effective in a technical world, but we ain't talking about a technical world, where the methodologies of logic dominate. We're not talking about logic being the dominator. Reason itself, paradoxically, is a major block to reaching higher levels of consciousness. Transcending this level is relatively uncommon in our society. Now we're going to go to energy level 500, love, and I'm going to pick up page 90 next to the last two paragraphs. He says, level 500. At this level of development, the capacity to discern essence becomes predominant. The core of an issue becomes the center of focus. As reason is bypassed, there arises the capacity for instantaneous recognition of the totality of a problem and a major expansion of context, especially regarding time and process. Reason deals only with particulars, whereas love deals with entities, right? This ability often subscribed to intuition. It is the capacity for instantaneous understanding without resorting to sequential symbol processing. This is one of the things about reason. Any sequential things tend to make sense. If it ain't sequential, it tends not to what? Make sense. It's not connected. They call it irrational. Moving on. He said, this apparently abstract phenomena is, in fact, quite concrete. It is accompanied by a measurable release of endorphins in the brain. Love takes no position and thus is global, rising above separation. It is then possible to be one with another, quote, end of quote, for there are no longer any barriers. Love is therefore inclusive and expands the sense of self progressively. Love focuses on the goodness of life in all its expressions and augments that which is positive. It dissolves negativity by recontextualizing it rather than by attacking it. This is the level of true happiness. But although the world is fascinated with the subject of love, and all viable religions calibrate at 500 or over, it is interesting to note that only 0.4% of the world's population ever reaches
That's 4.0.
Population ever reaches the level of evolution of consciousness. So we see here that consciousness has to be then an integral part of the whole of everything. That's why Kavvah becomes so important to us, because we talk about love, and of course, in a world of reason, you have all the reasons why you shouldn't love so-and-so, shouldn't do nothing. That's what reason does. But that's a level that we're going to have to deal with. In the closing part of it, about Kavvah, it says, the original Bereshit, Genesis, Kavvah, whole, was manipulated when the translation of the King James Version of Genesis 1:29. Now, I understand what Eitai said. I want us to understand that however it happened, we in control of it, you know. Nevertheless, the phrase, the fruit of the tree yielding seed, to you it shall be meat. This is the word meat, that the word Genesis 1:29, where Kavvah comes from. And you check it out yourself. The word meat there is Kavvah. This begins the usage of the profane language, which creates the problem that has been and still is a plague upon humanity until this day. Because now, why we saying this, we say because what language have done today in this simulated reality, it has put us in opposition to things being unified and things being holistic. The answer to the problem of today are found in the concept of what we are referring to as profane language. This missing element is interesting, and understanding it, they're much more than just awareness. It is the creative force of the entire universe. We're talking about consciousness. The word consciousness is in the Hebrew language, its root word is yada, which means knowledge. So this is to say that consciousness is built on knowledge, or knowledge determines consciousness. So what I'm going back to K, Eitai. I think you had mentioned something about K, and maybe David can help us here, where it said K, and when it's put in a certain term, it's like something that you know or something that you knew, because it has the K-N-O-W, K-N-E-W. I don't know exactly how, but David had mentioned that. So consciousness has to be a part of something that you already know. You know, it's just that the loss of that knowledge, you know, has to be within us. So that was the point that we wanted to bring out about Kavvah and how all these things is in an integral part of us.
Okay. Well, we're going to connect this right up in the simplest way that we can. We're going to go with a story in order to understand this concept of mind and to discern our essence. Because this is something that is not difficult for us, because we have been equipped with the mechanism, which is neuromelanin, by virtue of our ancient ancestors. We've been equipped with all the power that we need to get to the level that we need to get to at this point. Understand, this was all predetermined. This was all predetermined. It was mathematically worked out that we would ascend at this very moment. And in these times, we must take possession of that. We have to realize that it should be evident due to the mere fact that we are discussing these things. It should be clearly evident to us that the time is now and that we have been given everything that we need to do this. And we're going to use a simple story that we are all aware of to break down this entire concept of mind versus consciousness. And it is in the Adam and Eve story. It is in the Adam and Eve story. Our ancestors understand they were brilliant in forethought. They were brilliant and divine in forethought, because the ones that did it, you must understand, were not like us. They had not fallen asleep. They were preparing material for us from a conscious position that would activate us when we would fall into the realms of unconsciousness. We must understand that. They got our back. They are here. They have always been active, but we, just like today, we ignore them. When we hear, all of us have said, I should have followed what? My first mind. That's your ancestors talking to you. When you dream about an ice cream cone, and you wake up and turn the television on and someone is eating an ice cream cone, you go outside and then the first person you see got an ice cream cone pictured on their t-shirt. Then you get to where you're going and people are talking about, you know what would be nice on this hot day? Is an ice cream cone. That is your ancestors speaking to it, but we say coincidence. And it's not coincidence. It is an energetic pattern. They are trying to signal us. And then sometimes when we follow, we say, well, let me go and get an ice cream cone. We go there, and lo and behold, is someone that is there that we need to see, that gives us some information or creates a nexus for an intent that we had. Maybe it was to uh, uh, a business connection, or maybe it's somebody we go there, we're looking for a car. Somebody say, hey man, haven't seen you in a long time. And then they say, hey, you know, I'm selling this car. I was here to meet the person, but at this ice cream cone shop, but they didn't show up. Would you be interested? You understand? That is our ancestors. That is their will being put in place at all times. It is energetic and it is inescapable. But up to this point, we have ignored it. And it's time to reconnect with this. It's time to reconnect with this. They have left us reliable tools to find our way back. But again, they've become widely ignored. It is time to take possession of them, and aggressively, with confidence. What Nasik is getting at is that we have to properly discern our identity, the true essence, beyond what we call a mind. Is that a fair statement?
Fair statement.
Seems fair to me.
It is not the brain. And if it's not the brain, because the brain is just a piece of meat, we have to
Right.
understand what activates the brain. That
Right.
creates a space or a box called mind. Because we do not come in with a mind that is already filled up, a box that is already filled up. Emanation causes us to do what, Amaria?
To become conscious.
No. You got to get this concept, brother. The divine emanating into the material world does not cause us to be conscious. What does it do? It causes us
Causes us
what?
to lose consciousness.
It empties the box.
Right. Causes us to lose consciousness.
It causes us to forget. It causes us to disconnect. It causes us to reboot again. We got to get this concept. You with me?
I'm with you now.
All right? I'm going to come to you every time on that one. And that's a fat, slow pitch for you. You should be able to knock that out the park every time. When
That's all right. This is the broadcast.
the
Not always.
the energizing principle that energizes our brain, that creates what is called a mind, is what? Dark energy, dark matter energy, or melanin, right?
Right.
So melanin is the essence. So when we read in Power versus Force that level 400 is where you start departing from reason and rationale and rationalizing and logical computing and move into what? Discerning essence. So you're moving now beyond what we've been socially engineered to depend on, and that is mind. That is that blank box, the empty box that social engineers have filled up with their concepts, their perceptions, their definitions, their points of view, and worstly, opinions. So
Mhm.
as we raise our consciousness, we get beyond the mind, right, Nasi? And we get into discerning our true selves, our essence. So we got to break down that word that the doctor, David R. Hawkins, used, essence, because it's going to connect us perfectly to what has been prepared for us by our divine ancestors. Discerning essence, or your divine true identity. This is what we've been laboring to get to, Nasi, and to get ourselves to see. We have to raise our consciousness level in order to understand exactly who and what we are. So the ancestors in the scriptures wrote us a little allegory, wrote us a little story that would help us. And it was called The Serpent, the Woman, the Man, and God. So it is the serpent, Kavvah, or Eve, Adam, and God, the Father. All right? This was not a historical story. It was called a catechism, or a little teaching method to allow us to separate the different aspects of self. All right?
Mhm.
The aspects that are truly the one aspect that is truly ourselves, and the other, which are apparitions or aspects of the mind. Anytime that you see a man and a woman, male and female, that you see duality, you know that that is an aspect of the mind. Are y'all with me?
Say that again.
Anytime you see something in terms of hot, cold, good, evil, male, female, high, low, narrow, wide, that is an aspect of your mind. It is a figment of your mind when you see things in separation, in duality. Is that a correct statement?
That's a correct statement.
That's a
Yes.
correct statement. So now let's look at these words, because the words essence and the word identity will lead us to this teaching. When you break the word identity down, you get the word id entity. I want everybody to look at that. Id entity. Your id entity, therefore, is your true self. And we're going to connect the characters in the Bible Adam, Eve, and the serpent, and we're going to look at them and match them up. And then once we understand this and how they interplay in the allegory, we're going to understand our true self and how to get back to our original identity and source of power. This exercise, look, the exercise in itself will raise your consciousness level. You with me?
Mm.
The exercise, the catechism, this little allegory, understanding it and relating it to ourselves will raise our consciousness level exponentially. So, again, discerning essence. We go back and in Power versus Force here, he said that level 400 gets us past reason, past rationale and rationalizing, past logic, and into what? The discernment of essence.
Eitai, that's level 500. 400 is the level of reason.
Oh, okay. No, what I'm saying, I'm sorry. Let me read it the way that he has it here. He says, reason is limited, that it doesn't afford the capacity for the discernment of essence. So what I'm saying is he mentions this in level, in the session rather, level 400, energy level 400 reason. You're correct. That once we get beyond that, we get into the area of the discernment of essence. So this little catechism that the ancestors left us in the Bible, in the first chapter, is going to allow us to line these things up and to go to that next level where we what? Discern our essence, our true identity, or our id entity. Does everyone see that in that word? The id entity. Do we see that in the word identity?
Yes.
Now see, turn your mic on.
Don't forget to read on page 90, that second paragraph says at the level of 500, what happens?
Go ahead, you read it.
Okay, at the level of 500 of development, the capacity to discern essence become predominant. The core of an issue become the center of focus.
Absolutely.
No longer dealing with parts and parts. You are talking about the core and essence of everything, or the core or the center, which what determines, you understand, the relationship to all elements of everything.
Now let me ask Amari a question. What is the nucleus or the core of the cell?
That's the
What is it made of?
melanin,
There's only one issue.
dark matter.
There's only one issue, and that's melanin.
Yeah.
There's only one issue. This is all we're talking about. And melanin determines exactly who and what we are. And I'm going to show you in the story of Adam and Kavvah, of Adam and Eve, that this was at the core of that little allegory. The terms id, remember, id entity, ego, and superego are not Freud's own. Did y'all hear that?
Yeah.
Our ancestors put these words in here. Freud didn't make them up. Listen, they are Latinizations by his translator, James Strachey. Freud himself wrote Das Es, das Ich, and das Über-Ich, respectively, the it, the I, and the over-I, or the I above. And that is represented in our ancient artwork, the I at the cornerstone of the temple. That is this I. The temple is our body. You're going to, and what happened when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge? Their eyes were open. They understood that they were like what? The gods. You shall be like the gods, what? Discerning, understanding duality.
Eitai, right there, could you take a moment? Right there is where the trick occurs, so to speak, for in the minds of the people.
I'm going to
Because
walk
we've
them
been
through it. I'm going to walk them right through it.
Okay, all right, okay.
We're going to use the language. I understand. I'm going to walk them through it.
Okay.
The terms id, ego, and superego. So id entity, s is actually, das S is actually what is referred to as id. So id entity or essence, or essence, divine sense or essence. A divine sense would be divine hearing. A divine sense would be a divine sense of smell. A divine sense would be divine touch. A divine sense would be divine taste. A divine sense would be divine, not human eyesight. That refers to that essence, that id sense, that essence. Most people have eyes, but they can't see. They have ears, but they can't hear. They have a heart, but they can't discern, because they have no connection to their true id entity or their true essence. You all with me? Make sense?
Yeah.
So these have to be activated. Again, the discernment of essence, that is melanin, dark matter energy, or the essence, your true id entity, essence or id entity. Let's look at what essence means, because we're going to walk through this step by step. Essentia, that is from Latin, meaning being. It means being or essence. Again, the present participle or stem of essay, to be. Do we see this?
Yeah.
So another way of saying that, when we get to the Old English, is I am or I be. The same way the God of the Bible, the divine being, introduced himself. Who shall we say? Ea, Asher, Ea. I am that I am. I just be. All right?
Identity.
We have to think of these things in terms, not in terms of being like that, but in terms of the divine essence of life itself. We know that that is melanin. We know that that is melanin, dark matter, energy. We in agreement.
Yeah.
Let's carry it forward. Now, again, they're going to steal. Now, we're talking about essence. They gave us I am. Now, they're going to connect this to the Bible. Originally, the substance of the Trinity. The substance of the Trinity. And the Trinity, you may tell y'all what the Trinity is? Me, myself, and I.
I know that.
We got to stop being religious. If it's my true identity, if it's my entity, if it's my essence, sense tells me it's not talking about something outside of myself. It's talking about me, myself, and I.
Me, myself, and I is one.
Is one. I would not have sense to think otherwise. I would be using my mind and not my sense. All right?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, so we're moving on. It says the general sense of the basic element of anything. Family, we've gone over and over and over it. We've educated ourselves intellectually about melanin. We know that it is what? The fundamental principle or basic element of all that is, of Kuf Lamed, of the whole. It is the whole, and it is the basic element of the whole. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, again, these dates, now see, this word essence now is first recorded in English in the 1650s. We don't even have to think hard to understand where we were in the 1650s. Though this is the underlying notion of the first English use of essential. So this is our ancestors carrying this thing, this idea forward for us. It don't matter who had it. Their will, it was put in their minds to do what? Accomplish our ancestors' will. So they brought it forward into the lexicon. Why? So we can make this connection now at a time when we are what? Waking up, becoming conscious. Meaning the ingredient which gives something its particular character. And we're talking about our divine character. Makes sense?
We got a testimony here I want everybody to hear.
Okay.
I got someone saying with me, Akamishu, please, Akamishu.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I wrote a book entitled Divine Darkness, The Art of Deception. In that book, I describe a girl who was raised by her aunt, protected by her aunt in Italy, she was one of the highest ranking families in Italy at that time. Okay. She was the niece of the Pope, but she was black. At that time, they began to change in the Renaissance the very image of Yeshua, and the people.
Absolutely.
Moving it from black to Italian. They used bums off the street.
Absolutely.
Cadavers, everything they could think of that reflected white people. That's what they used to change the very image of the people that are supposed to be in the Bible. And they were still in the midst of all that. She was watching all this, but she had been taught by the Pope who the people were, and they had shrines to the Black Madonna all over Europe and still do.
That's correct. It's the highest iconography in European literature, and that is the Black Madonna and the Black Trinity.
And she was of the family of the Medici, the richest family that sponsored all the artwork that was done under Michelangelo, Leonardo,
Absolutely.
all those guys. The Medici family was the richest, most powerful family in Italy. Her father, who was a definite, they have a definite picture of him, was a black man, was the Prince of Florence before they killed him.
Wow.
He was a prince. When she got married, they had over 100 trained horses in her marriage ceremony before she got to the church. The whole story behind this woman, Julia de Medici, spelled Guilia, de Medici.
Now that word Medici, watch this. Now see, we're going to get to it though. That word Medici is related to the word medicine. All right? It's related to the word medicine. I'm going to show you how this works and then we'll get back to it, which is going to relate to this sign. You already see it, the R and the X. Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Hey.
The R and the X.
That's supposed to be Roman peace, but it's
Correct.
medicine.
Right. That's our sign and our symbol. But I'll just show it to you. I'll get to it later. It is a powerful symbol, and it relates to that very name, medicine, the R and the X, that it connects to a very powerful spiritual center that is within us. And that is, you know, I mean, talk about synchronicity. That absolutely connects it to this symbol.
Now, the Medici, not only was this girl related by blood to that family, the Medici family protected the Jews. In fact, who's the guy that they say was the greatest of the Jewish doctors? They have a nickname for him.
Salk?
But I can't think of the nickname. But he was the greatest doctor among the Jews, and he worked under the Medici. The Medici sponsored him and protected him.
Okay.
They protected a lot, but he came out of North Africa.
Absolutely. All this stuff
Okay.
is ours.
And so all of this was related and brought under the control of this one family. This one family. And it was Pope Leo, who was related as the uncle of this girl. They painted a picture of her with her aunt. And after she died, they painted her out of the picture.
Wow.
They just covered it over.
Wow.
They didn't want, because they were changing all of that. They were changing everything. And some Italians hated her because she was trying to explain to them that they should never change the image of Yah and the people.
Okay.
And that's why they painted her out of the picture.
Wow. All right.
All right.
Very interesting. So again, as we're talking about essence, it again is talking about the intrinsic nature or indispensable quality of something, not just something, our intrinsic nature, our indispensable quality. What is keeping us, what is hindering us from identifying with our true nature, which is divine, is the mind. Is the mind. All right? So, yes.
I was just going to say, let's stop right here and let's kind of, because we got quite a few people on, let's let them respond in terms of what has been said, because I know this is difficult, very difficult. You can't even talk today in common language without talking about the mind, you know. So how is this going over with everybody? Is everybody following what we're saying here? Are they understanding what we're saying? Any question you have, could you please raise them?
Okay.
Yeah. What was the question?
No, no one had a question. I think they were just asking if anyone had a question. And no one has come forward.
Is everybody comfortable at this point here where we are?
I am. I'm very comfortable. I'm really anxious to move on, but I understand the reality of where we are and what we have to do in terms of repetitory statements, because it has to be repeated for some to grasp it and take hold of it before they can move on. However, I know, a lot of this stuff already, and like I said, like I told Eitai, it's just refreshing for me to even hear it now, to come to the fruition, to come to the level where it is right now. It's very beautiful for me. I'm just sitting back here, just drinking this up, eating this like I'm eating gourmet food.
All right, let's continue on now. And again, you can interrupt at any time, but we want to continue this little exercise, this mental exercise that is going to raise our level of consciousness. So again, talking about the id entity, we're going to connect this all up with Adam and Eve and the serpent and that little story, how our ancestors left this for us. and to understand that the essence is talking about the soul. So we know the synonyms are soul, crux or cross, nucleus, we remember that, substance, principle, fundamental quality, or reality. Also, the nitty gritty. The nitty gritty is melanin. We shouldn't, we can use that too. We don't have to be so scientific. The nitty gritty. That is the subject of subjects. The crux of a matter is the central point. The central point. It is always melanin. Melanin is the central point, the central subject. We can never get away from that. The word id is related to the word it, and it is the word kai. When we say y'all kai, now in the past, we've always said y'all kai, and we've projected that out in terms of invoking blessings from something that is above ourselves, something
Right.
that is outside of ourselves. And we have to make a switch, a fundamental switch in evoking. When we say y'all kai, to direct that attention and therefore that flow of energy inward to the inward self. Are we clear?
We clear.
So this it or this id or this s, our essence, our identity is not to be found outside of ourselves. It can be felt inwardly. It is that it that causes life, that spark that generates life. And we went so far yesterday, we'll look at it again. Bear with me. Does everyone remember when we took a look at that, the moment that that egg is fertilized by the sperm? And you see that light jump into, we'll look at it again. That light jump into that egg right here. Right there. We'll go back. That flash of light is the id or the it or the dark energy, dark matter energy announcing itself. Do we get it? And then
Eitai.
you begin to see you begin to see cell division, differentiation, and variation begin to create what we call the physical body. But the physical body and the mind is not you. You are that divine spark that lights up that egg. That is you, the divine S, the divine id, the it factor emanating into the physical realms and causing your own physical development. Gotta see that. Gotta see that. That is divine science. It's a difficult concept, but it is what it is. And the concept is not going to devolve to anyone's particular level of thinking or understanding. This is what this exercise is designed to do. You must raise your consciousness level to the level of the information that you are receiving. This is the key. Nasik.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about this light that, sparks, and I noticed the color that would appear to be an orange-looking color. It looks more like what they depict as the sun. Is that any connection there?
Yeah, it is the connection. It is a connection. The color is just by way of imaging, but that would be correct to make that connection because
Okay.
it is that miniature sun, or the it's the SUN or the SON. Remember, this is all connected in this language, in this
Right.
iconography of the Trinity. And the sun was the one that came into what? The physical realms, was born
Right.
into the physical realm. So, yes.
Okay.
And so, this iconography, this allegorical imagery is used. So, the Chi, again, is related to the symbols of the Greek alphabet, as well as the Hebrew alphabet as well, because the Greek is related to the Hebrew to much older Sanskrit symbol, Chaldean and Akkadian and Sumerian Sanskrit as well. The Chi is the 22nd letter of the Greek alphabet, and this 22 is going to be related again to where we started in the book of the Revelation in terms of the 10 crowns, the 10 crowns of the 10 kingdoms, or the 10 kings. All right. This is all related. The letter is shaped like an X, and so the Greek letter name was used figuratively to signify such a shape or arrangement as chiasma, two things placed crosswise. So crossing is a symbol of the cross. When you take two things and cross them, that means sex. That means taking two opposite poles and putting them what? Into interrelation. So male and female, you cross that sperm with the egg, and guess what? That's how you enter in. You enter in through crossing. Guess what? Jesus, you exit through crossing as well. You got to get on that cross. You gotta get on that cross. So, Cairo is an early visual representation of the connection between the crucifixion of Jesus and his what? Triumphal resurrection. What are we trying to resurrect? Our divine identity, our divine essence, which means our divine senses and power. So we got to get on that cross. And guess what? And we got to go to hell. You don't understand it, but you're going to have to raise your consciousness level. You got to get on that cross, and you must go down before you come up. We know this. The sacred monogram.
Eitai.
Yes.
Again,
Down, you know.
Already, everybody already think they done went down. That was the whole idea, what they call descent, you know, and the fall. All that was going down. Everybody think they done went down, so they're trying to go up now. So you saying that the concept of going down is to lose that duality or dualism, or that that mind,
right?
That mind that cause you to see things any other way than wholeness.
We're gonna put it in the simplest terms possible. All right. So the sacred monogram, you're absolutely right though. The sacred monogram, Cairo, so called because it's composed of the Greek letters Chi and Rho, is of Egyptian origin. According to Sir Flinders Petrie, the Egyptologist, the monogram Cairo was the emblem of the Egyptian god Horus, thousands of years before Christ. But we're not familiar with the story of Horus. We're going to be much more familiar with that story later, and we'll go back and connect the Horus story with one which is more familiar to us, and that's the Jesus story. All right?
Okay.
So this is our ancestors. They left a trail of breadcrumbs for us to lead us safely back from what? What we know and are familiar with. That's all valid. But we have to connect it back to its more ancient understanding and therefore its higher conceptualization. So the cross is the instrument of Christ's crucifixion, the symbol of Christianity, talking about the crucifixion and death of Christ. But it wasn't actually Christ that was crucified. Christ was resurrected. It was Jesus that was crucified. And Christ was resurrected. We have to make that distinction clear. And this little exercise is going to make it clear. Christ is a representation of the divine essence of everyone. We're not trying to crucify that. That is what we're trying to resurrect. It is the false, counterfeit identity of Jesus, of whatever our human mind tells us that we are, and what we have up to this point identified with so strongly. Again, from the mid 1400s, the cross was the small cross with a human figure attached to it. Not a divine figure, but a human figure. And also the 22nd star in a constellation is the cross star. Now, here we go. Vital energy. This is still the word cross now. Vital energy that is held to animate the body internally. Now, see, just got through doing an exercise showing how melanin does what? Activates the body internally.
Right.
And is of central importance in some Eastern systems of medical treatment. Again, the RX, the Medici, as acupuncture of exercise or what? Self-defense, Tai Chi. We call it Tai Chi, but it's Tai Chi. And you can see we caught up on Yokai like the Hebrews invented it. But the idea of Kai is an ancient symbol that our ancestors left us. And they just, and I'm going to tell you the story about Moses. They told us in the story of Moses that that the Hebrew serpent would do what? Swallow up the Egyptian serpent. So that whatever power that the Egyptian serpent had would be what? Transferred to something that would be familiar to you. But you would have to trace it back to its essence. Because the way you received it is not going to be the way that it is going to empower you and activate you. You all with me?
Yeah.
So X again represents that aspect which is unknown, buried, or hidden. The X factor. All right? The X in mathematical equation. Malcolm X, meaning his hidden or unknown ancestry. The X-Men in comic books. The people don't know where they get their power from. X marks the spot. The X-File, Project X, etc. Similarly, the letter X is the symbol of the id, that aspect of our being that is unknown, buried, or hidden. That is not the mind. The occult aspect of our personality. Have to understand what this id is. The X also is the letter Tav in the Hebrew alphabet. Tav is the last or final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, X, and therefore symbolizes the final point or end mark. This is very symbolic and significant because it tells us that we're right at the end. And as we solve this identity factor, as we begin to discern essence, that this would mark the end of one era and the beginning of another era. We okay?
We all right.
Absolutely.
All right. As stated above, X also represents the cross, or the crux of the cross, the instrument or symbol of Jesus's, not Christ's, crucifixion or death. Furthermore, the letter X with its two crossing or intersecting lines further represents a crossing over or transitional point. Is everybody ready to transition
We
into
don't have a choice.
into our higher selves?
Right.
You would like to be.
That is the end or death of Jesus, the human aspect, and the birth of the Christ, divine aspect. Thus, in terms of occult symbology, the crucifixion of Jesus, not the Christ, is symbolic of the sacrificial or voluntary death of ego. The Jesus or human aspect by way of the cross or the id. The id energy, once we activate it, will do what? Bring an end to that ego aspect of reason, logic, rationale. We okay?
Hey,
I'll say it again. Furthermore, the letter X with its two crossing or intersecting lines further represent a crossing over or transitional point. That is the end, death of Jesus, the human aspect, and or the human identity, and the birth of the Christ divine aspect. Thus, in terms of occult symbology, the crucifixion of Jesus, not the Christ, is emblematic of the sacrificial or voluntary death of the ego, Jesus or the human aspect, by way of the X or the id. You got to see this. We're going to bring this on home and connect this to Adam and Eve and that little story, that little allegory, excuse me, that our ancestors left us. Moving on. Consequently, the allegorical death of Jesus, not the Christ, is not, as we have been taught, an act of salvation on behalf of humanity. It is not, as we've been taught, an act of salvation on behalf of humanity. This is where the switch in our mentality must take place. Much to the contrary, the crucifixion metaphor of Jesus is a symbolic indictment and condemnation of humanity and the human aspect rather than an affirmation of it. Only after the death of Jesus, the ego or the human aspect, does he what? Descend into the unknown, hidden lower areas, underworld, abyss, netherworld, hell, whatever you want to talk to, and return or ascend as the resurrected Christ, the real id entity, the whole man, Kaf Lamed, the true self. So we're going to pause here and we're going to entertain, we're going to allow a little Selah moment. So that we just pause and consider, because we've said a lot, but we want to connect this today in this session and give everybody a chance to take a breather and consider what we've talked about and ask questions, make comments, And if we want everybody to make a comment, if it's not anything more than to say, hey, Beseder, I'm good. I'm ready to go forward. So we're giving everybody a chance right now. I'm going to step away and grab me another bottle of water real quick. But feel free.
This is David, and I'm with a friend of mine. And I'm sure what you just said is shocking, but she's calm about it. She's calm about it. But I think the whole class is profound, and I see those back-to-back K's and what you're talking about, the X with the line down the middle.
Absolutely.
David Mispay, are you on?
Yes. Yeah, my comment is that I find it very interesting, and it's truthful. I can feel exactly where you're coming from with this, in terms of especially when you talk about the essence, the identity, the id, in terms of it's talking about the melanin. Essence is the melanin. I can feel you. Sounds good. I appreciate the wisdom.
Very good.
Sadiq, are you on? Sadiq is not on, huh? Kodemona, are you on?
She just opened up her mic, but I don't hear anything.
Emona. Could you hear Eitai?
No, that was another caller.
Oh.
I do see a Coat Imuna. Her mic is on. I don't know if she's trying to speak now, but maybe some of the difficulty is learning how to operate and mute and unmute these mics. We might be having a problem with working the technology.
Do you see a brother by the name of Sadiq on?
No, I don't. I see two more callers other than David, David.
Okay.
So we're gonna push on, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Everybody good? Nasik, you all right?
We're good.
We good.
All right.
Good.
So
I just want to say my mic will be off because there's a lot of talking in the background. I don't want you guys to hear the noise and stuff.
very good.
So
Hold on.
okay.
So here we are. So again, the allegorical death of Jesus, not the Christ, is not, as we have been taught, an act of salvation on behalf of humanity. Much to the contrary, the crucifixion metaphor of Jesus is a symbolic indictment and condemnation of humanity and the human aspect rather than an affirmation of it. Only after the death of Jesus, the ego or the human aspect, does he descend into the unknown, hidden lower areas, underworld, abyss, netherworld, hell, whatever you want to call it, and return or ascend as a resurrected Christ, the real it entity, the whole man, the true self. So this has been, again, it is an allegory, it is a primer, it is a catechism for us so that we can uh, uh, understand the way back to our true essence, our true id entity. The id in the words id entity or identity. We're getting some feedback from someone else's phone. If we can close our mics until we have to speak, I'd appreciate it. Okay, thank you. When we look at the words identity, we see the word id. When we look at the word hidden, we see the word id as well. When we look at the word ident or evident, we see the word id as well. So we have a hidden identity and a evident identity. Identity means sameness, oneness, again, kuf lamet, state of being, a state of being the same. So it implies, when we're talking about the id entity, it implies no separation, no duality. The Latin word identatus means sameness, wholeness, the same. Idem means the same, and it's when we say as above, so below. So we know that which is above, or which used to be above, was God, the God of the Bible, or divinity. But in identity, there is no separation. I and my Father are what? One.
One.
In Latin, literally the same. From id, it, that one. Identify means to regard as the same. So I don't regard divinity as anything different or separate. That which is above, the higher identity, the higher entity, or the self, or the div entity. Do you all get it? Div entity, the divine entity, corresponds to or is the same as that which is below, what I formerly thought as the lower entity, the self or the mortal. So let's connect these, the id, the ego, and the superego with the Genesis allegory. So holistically comprehending the three aspects of being or personality in the Genesis allegory. Was not three people there. This is talking about you, three aspects of you. The id, ego, and the superego. The id corresponding to the serpent, the ego corresponding to Kavvah, and the superego corresponding to Adam / God. You all with me? Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. So the serpent beast is the id. The serpent beast is the id, the wisest thing about you.
Oh boy.
When we look at this word beast now, I'm going to prove it to you. It is the word kai that they translate the word beast as. This is our ancestors left us this roadmap back to ourselves. It is the word kai. And we know that the word kai is related to the word it, the word it related to the word id, the word id actually the word es. It is our essence. The serpent beast represents our essence. Ain't got nothing to do with the devil, unless you the one that the devil is coming for.
Eitai, let me ask a question here. At this point, all the Hebrew speakers that do any reading, you know, you don't have to look. You don't even have to look at the, you know, the Strong's Concordance. I mean, if they just understand Hebrew, how do you not see that? I mean, I'm talking about. I ain't talking about just fundamental Hebrew speakers, but I'm talking about, you know, that really know the language. How did they miss this here?
Because this was timed. It was time to activate. We have to understand our ancestors got this all under control. It was time to activate at this moment. We right on time, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that we're on time.
We right on time. So it would be apparent to us, once this stuff started coming back to us, it would be apparent to us that, look, the time is now. The time to rise and to do this stuff is now. It wouldn't have made, I mean, they would have stoned people 10 years ago introducing something like this. And we still might be at that point where we catch a few bricks to the head for this.
Well, you had little bits and pieces of it back then, and even when you brought those little bits and pieces up, you still got chewed out and beat up.
That's correct.
Just that little bit.
Correct. So it's this word kai, which we've connected carefully to the word id or it or essence, S. So this all fits together. So you go forward and you look at the word kaya. All right? Kaya. And it means that aspect which is alive or which allows to live. It means an activating or quickening force. We know that's melanin. We just saw it. We just saw it light up an egg. We saw it quicken an egg with its presence, correct?
Yeah.
It's that which gives life. And it's the word kaya, related to the word kai. Tracing it back, it means to live. It all is connected to life. Quickening, a quickening agent. Now, let's talk about the word id so that we can be comfortable with this word and know that it is talking about kai or melanin, or dark matter energy. I'm reading from here. The id knows no judgments of value. Listen, this is going to take no good and evil. Don't know nothing about that. No morality. It is representative of what we call chaos. It is anti-order, anti-matter. And what is antimatter? Melanin, dark energy. It just all fits together, y'all. It is called the instinctual cathexis seeking discharge, that in our view is looking to explode. It's looking to express itself. That in our view is all there is in id. It is regarded as the great reservoir of libido, the instinctive drive to create, the life instincts that are crucial to pleasurable survival. That is, the survival impulses of fight, flight, or can I spend the night? Alongside the life instincts came the death instincts. Once you create one thought, you create the opposite thought. Look, everything is mental. The universe is all mental. Whatever you think of it. So if you think of left, you automatically create right. You think of up, you automatically do what? Create down. You create hot, you automatically create cold. The id don't care nothing about that. It just wants to create. So alongside life instincts came death instincts. The death drive which Freud articulated relatively late in his career in the hypothesis of a death instinct, the task of which is to lead organic life back to what?
Inanimate state.
Thus, getting on that cross. This is an alchemical process. It don't have nothing to do with good and evil. It's an alchemical process that must be carried out if you want to ascend. In other words, if you want to live again, you must die.
Wow.
We're not necessarily talking about physical death, but yes, that too. For Freud, the death instinct would thus seem to express itself, though probably only in part, as an instinct of what? Destruction. So divinity, again, is the creative life instinct, Genesis, or the generator, correct, in the G, the operative or ability to sustain, the O, and of course, the destructive instinct, to destroy once the process was what? Complete and you were ready to start over. Death is not an ending. It is a beginning. We have a poor understanding of that. Based on what? Based on Western genetic or social engineering.
There you
go. Directed against the external world and other organisms.
You're in the matrix, people.
Through aggression. Freud considered that the id, what? the whole person. The Kuf Lamed originally includes all the instructional impulses or instinctual impulses, the destructive instinct as well. Wouldn't that be Kuf Lamed?
Yeah.
But our minds have segregated because, listen, y'all, we have identified so heavily with our humanity that we've what? We've excluded the destructive aspect from divinity. Y'all got to see this. We so scared that our physical bodies are going to die that we haven't embraced the destructive aspect of life. That's the Kuf Lamed. So when someone, see, it's all about intent now, see. And if you say, hey, do you know Ox so-and-so? And I say, yeah, I love that dude to death. Automatically in the kingdom, I get corrected. No, we don't say that. We say, you love him to life. Well, that's what I meant. That's what my intention was. But we play these word games and semantics. Why? Because we are so fearful of interjecting the Kuf Lamed, the whole idea. You are with me? What's the difference? What's the difference in me saying, I'm going to choke you to death, or I'm going to choke the life out of you? End of the day, you getting choked. It's my intent. It don't matter if I say it nicely, life or death. We have a biased understanding. Y'all with me? What's the difference in me saying and somebody saying you, I'm about to choke the life out of you? Does that make it any better than saying I'm going to choke you to death? Does that make it any better? Absolutely not. It is our creative intent that has the underlying power. It is the creative intent or the destructive intent of that thought. You all with me? We got to make this switch. Got to make this switch. If we talking about Kuf Lamed, why are we going to be afraid to use the word death or to conceptualize death? Why are we going to be afraid? If our intention is to live, then we're going to live. If our intention is to die, guess what? No matter how nice you say it.
Yeah.
That's going to be our ticket out. Think about it.
Akalai. At this point here, if we accept the idea that the universe functions according to what we say, and I always like to how we conceptualize things and try to help us along the way. We have to now be careful about what we speak, because what we speak, once it go forth, like you say now, it is the activating, you understand, force that's coming from within out. What do we expect to happen other than that which we expressed out to happen? What do we expect? So I want to go back to something Eitai just said earlier, and it's so perfect. It's like on page 231 in the Power versus Force. He said the universe is very cooperative.
Absolutely.
As much as it is not different from consciousness. So whatever your consciousness and your attention it's going to manifest it, whether you meant it or not.
Correct. But I have to make sure that my intent is clear.
Right, right.
And where, look, where attention goes, energy flows. But what is before attention? Intent. Where I intend to what? Direct my attention and have my energy flow. Intention is my possession of my divine mind. My kingdom come. My will be, my intention in
Yeah.
earth as it is in heaven. That's why I say we got to assume this creative and destructive position of the divine. That is our divine essence. And otherwise, we're not going to manifest any power. And we have to stop playing games with ourselves, these little games, these little semantics. Make our intentions clear and then manifest that through the direction of our intention and our divine energy. But if we don't plug into ourselves, we'll never manifest any power. If we're looking to plug in to something that is higher and outside of ourselves, we'll never do it. The head has got to plug into what? The tail has got to plug into what? The head. That is Kuflamet. That makes the whole. And the Nasi, that makes the HOLE as well as the WHOLE. That's how that whole is how we come in and how we exit out.
Yeah.
You all with me?
Yeah.
You all right, Amaria?
Amaya.
Yeah, I'm here.
You all there?
Here.
All right. Now here's the important thing. Here's the important thing, Kulam. Where the id is, there shall ego be. Where this is the tricky part. Where id is, there shall ego be. This is the problem. And this begins to tell the story of Kavvah and the serpent. Kavvah representing the id, the ego rather, and the serpent representing the id. The id being representative or symbolic or symbolized in the serpent, and the ego symbolized in Kavvah. Now remember, Kai connected to Kaya, meaning life, and then Kavvah connecting to Kai, look. And it was said that she was the mother of all living, right?
Right.
But it actually means, Kavvah actually means to declare or show or tell or make something known. It means to show, interpret, explain, inform, and then declare. So the woman, understand, in the biblical story, was the one that was what? Communicating back and forth between the essence and what? The false identity, the dual identity of duality. So the woman, listen, Kavvah, was saying, God said we can't eat from this tree. The essence said, no, you can eat from these trees, but understand this. Your eyes are going to be open and you're going to tap into your divine self. You already know this. But
that's a major, major difference about how that has been explained.
absolutely. But you're going to see that this is how it plays out. So the id refers to instincts, the ego, the external reality, the superego, how we interpret the external, what we perceive as external realities in a moralistic or good or evil sense. Good or evil sense. Just follow the story now. The id, represented as the serpent and then later villainized as the devil or Satan. Listen, the id is the only component of personality that is what? Present from birth. That is that boom, that light that comes in, dark energy and dark matter that initiates everything. You all with me?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
only aspect of you that is the real you. Understand, if we believe like we were taught that God performed the miracle of birth, that he's the one that provided that divine spark, then we have to be divine by that logic. Right?
Yeah, by that logic.
So the id says that this is the only component of personality that is present from birth. So we have to get this aspect of us being created out of our mental perception. We emanate it. We emanate it by choice into this reality. And by way of what? Crossing. When we sensed that crossing, we understood that that created a portal. And we chose that portal, the crossing of our mother and father, earthly mother and father, to what? Emanate into this existence. That is how it is done. The id is this aspect of personality is entirely unconscious, thus instinctive, and represents instinctive or primal primitive behaviors. That is why it is referred to as the beast, or we said that that word beast was actually the word Kai, the primal life forces. According to Freud, the id is the source of all psychic energy. Stop there. That is your divine power. Sisters, that is on the call, that is especially your divine power. That is your
And
surrounding protective power of your male counterpart, your male dualistic expression, those psychic powers, mother wit, female intuition, those are just low vibratory. But you have a full range. The sisters have primary access to a full range of these psychic powers. The brothers too, but the sisters have primary aspects, primary access. This is why Kavvah communicates with what? That serpent energy. She's the primary communicator with it and the primary conduit. Any psychic powers that the brothers have is by virtue of the sisters. Our societies understood this completely, and there was no moral or social, oh, we raising the sisters up too high. It's just a fact. We didn't have those type of identity problems. We understood that this is the science, and that's what the sisters represent here in this reality. Go ahead, Nasi.
No, I was just thinking it's really something when you put this in perspective, how, you know, women actually take care of men. You know what I mean? Even in our low state, women actually take care of the brothers. So you imagine when we both, male and female, you know, I mean, you can't, it's hard to even fathom exactly what this can be like.
Now, see, you know what? It's heaven. It's going to be heaven.
You're right.
It's going to
right.
be heaven. But we created. We ain't waiting for heaven to come from somebody else. Once we activate, I promise you, once we activate these powers, it's going to be a new world, new heaven, new earth, new paradigm. This thing has to turn over, and it's beginning to turn over. This is the only reason we have access to this information. So it is the source of all. Say again.
I say it have to turn over.
It is.
Well, Eitai, at the top of the hour, we break it off at 8 o'clock. Okay.
All right. I just want to make the connection with the. Give me about 5-10 more minutes, and then
no problem.
We'll be done.
Okay.
And we want to tomorrow connect this, and I'll show you, with the sisters, because this is how the id entity, it was always represented as the feminine. Always. Always. And it's going to get us into this Kalipot, these 10 heads, all right, 10 kings, 10 Kalipot, and how this is going to turning around at this point. They're called the 10 hails, or the 10 horns, in 7 heads, or on 7 heads, or in 7 places. And again, it's talking about this word Sheol, or shell, or the word hail, or hull. And we're going to really get into this. And the sisters are going to lead this. The sisters are going to lead this. And I'm talking about from an energetic sense. We're not giving you permission like that. We can't. We didn't determine it. This is just the way that the thing is set out. And you just have to connect to what? Your true id entity. Your true id entity is laid out in the scriptures with Kavvah, the feminine aspect, interacting with the divine aspect. That's just how it lays out. Real quick, the id is the dark, inaccessible part of our personality. What little we know, we have learned from the study of dream work, and of course, the construction of neurotic symptoms, and most of that is of a negative character and can be described only as a contrast to the ego. We approach the id with analogies. We call it chaos, the cauldron full of seething excitations. It is filled with energy, reaching it from the instincts, but has no organization, no order, is chaotic, produces no collective will, because it is self-centered and individualistic, but only a striving to bring about the satisfaction of instinctual needs, subject to the observance of the pleasure principle. Janet Jackson tried to inform us of that when she came out with the song, The Pleasure Principle. And we thought, ooh, Janet is growing up. We had no understanding that she was giving the sisters a clue to connect back to this instinctual, or what is called intuitive, understanding. Your real self is going to determine, Nasi, your real intent. Your real intent. And the real intent, we're going to have a common understanding of what that is. Everybody is going to have a different role, but the real intuitive intent is for this current system to what? Come down.
Yeah.
And for us to start again. There is no, everything that we have done in terms of a people, we already did it. We don't have to repeat nothing else in our lifetime. We've already done it. And it's time to pull the curtain on this thing, pull the plug, and start another show.
Now, Eitai, that's excellent. Excellent. I want to, this is not something you don't have to answer now.
Okay.
But I want you to think about this. I have two sources, and I'm going to give you the two sources, and I know how you feel about one of them. But then I'm going to tell you, the point. One of them is Damon Berry, and the other is Sevon. Beaumont. Now, Beaumont always talks about, dying and leaving here, and I have not been able to figure out, is he talking metaphorically or physically? It's been difficult for me to what he really means, how he mean it. Damon Berry in his final episode, and he said it also in the Black Knight, which was number 6, I think, and then the number 7 was something about the God something. But anyway, the point is, he's depicting at the end, and he talks about how has been a continuous, he says something like 30,000 different civilizations has, at one time or another inhabit this planet. In other words, he keeps talking about an end, and he said when the end finishes, whoever sees the end, how it happened, all memory is lost and never, in other words, you have to what? Start again or reincarnate. So my question is, we keep talking about the element of the whole, the Kavvah, how it encompasses the destructive element of it. So when we think of the destructive element, is that the same idea that we are talking in the physical sense, or are we talking about it in more the allegorical sense? Now, like I said, you don't have to answer now, but
Right. But we'll get into it tomorrow. It's talking about both physical and allegorical, and we'll make a distinction tomorrow. All right.
Okay, that'll work.
All right.
All right.
Before we sign up, could I make a comment? This is David from East Bay.
Go ahead. Well, hold on one second, brother. I'm going to stop the recording.